Hello there friends and welcome for today's Pathfinder Enhanced Guide. We have an updated Kineticist build. I usually get questions about my last Kineticist guide, wondering if everything is still working, and the answer is yes, Kineticist is still at full power, especially when boosted by the Demon Mythic Path. To put it simply, with a Kineticist you can achieve the ultimate area of effect damage possible. You can potentially hit the enemies for higher than 1000 damage, in a massive area of effect that even knocks enemies down too. And the best part is, as a Kineticist you have infinite uses of all of your abilities, so no need to spam rest. Kineticists don't just excel at high area of effect damage, the reality is they are quite versatile. They are also capable of amazing single target ranged blows or even extreme melee damage through your kinetic blade hits, which can go for multiple times per round, limited only by your attacks number. Lastly, I've also built this character to be quite the respectable skill monkey. We'll get massive scores into all of the classic rogue skills: mobility, trickery and stealth. So without further ado, let us get started into our Kineticist build, but first I want to cover how the main mechanics behind the Kineticist class works. After all, it is the class that has probably the most unique features of them all, and it would be best to master them if you want to have fun with your Kineticist run. Let us start with the elements. Right at level 1, you'll choose your first element to specialize in, but you'll also get to pick two other ones, first at level 7 and then another at level 15. And the most interesting part is, later, when you get more elements, you can actually combine them into different types. There's actually a lot of different combinations, as you can see in this chart here, and some abilities will only be available for some of them. For example, for Deadly Earth you need Earth, Magma, Metal or Mud. Mud being a combination of water's physical blast together with Earth. Speaking about blasts, let's now cover how they work. The blast is your default Kineticist ability. You already start the game with it, and it receives increases every odd level. It's pretty similar to the Warlock Eldritch Blast ability from Dungeons & Dragons 3rd edition, in a way at least. The blast costs a standard action, so you can only use one per round unless you quicken it later through the METAKINESIS feat, and it can be either a physical blast or energy blast. This will depend on the element you pick. Fire, for example, only has access to one blast, which is energy. Water, on the other hand, can choose between energy through Cold Blast or physical through Water Blast. Let's take it step by step. Physical blasts, like water here, are normal ranged attacks, which means they hit the enemy's normal AC, just like a ranged bow or crossbow hit. They bypass spell resistance, and they also deal somewhat higher damage, especially when you combine them later on, than normal energy blasts. It doesn't need any saying that physical blasts will deal physical damage, in the case of water, bludgeoning. Now, energy blasts are different in that they are ranged touch attacks, so they have a much easier time hitting enemies as they target the enemy's touch AC instead. They will need to penetrate spell resistance, however, and the damage type will be energy depending on what element you pick. Cold, for example, is cold, the fire one will be fire. As I've mentioned before, at level 7 you get to combine elements. 2 energy blasts will become an energy composite blast, while 2 physical ones will become a physical composite blast. They follow the same logic between the normal energy or physical blasts, and once again, physical composite blasts will deal even higher damage. Overall, I strongly prefer the physical blasts. First, because they don't have to penetrate spell resistance, which is very annoying early game when it comes to demons. Second, they also don't have to penetrate energy resistances or immunities, and demons also have that, so you won't need to bother with Ascended Element. Plus, the extra boost to damage from physical composite blasts means a lot, because you'll be multiplying this damage even further to the METAKINESIS feats later on, like Empower and Maximize. The downside of having to hit normal AC honestly doesn't really matter outside of the very early game, but even then for this build I'll give you ways of overcoming that. Plus, the strongest Kineticist abilities, like Deadly Earth, don't have a roll to hit, so they always hit regardless of the enemy's AC. It's that good. So with that out of the way, let's now get into how to actually use all of your Kineticist abilities, and like I said, you have many of them. First, you need to access your abilities tab. Right at the center of the screen, the little A icon here. Your abilities will depend on what element and element combinations you have picked. For example, since my character has both the Earth Blast and also the Water Blast, I also have access to Mud, which is the physical composite combination of them. Let's just say you've started the game, so you only have one normal blast, like water. To actually use your Kineticist abilities, based on the element you choose, you have to click on the element, or the little arrow icon above it, and then is when you can choose what you use. For example, by clicking on water, we have first, Water Blast, which is the default blast ability, right? So the ranged blast you throw at the enemy. The other ones will depend on what infusions and specializations you have. I can also apply wall to it or extended range. This works the same for the composite blast. Let's click on mud. I get the normal mud blast. Notice how it deals higher damage than the normal water blast because it is a composite blast. Through mud, I also have the OP Deadly Earth, also extended range and wall 2. For other Kineticist abilities like, let's say, infusions, such as bowling and pushing, to apply them automatically, well, you just click on them so they become outlined, just like this, right? This is the same for example, your Kinetic Blade ability. You just click on it depending on the element you want the blade to be. Now, you might have noticed some of your Kineticist abilities have this little number here at the upper rightmost corner. For example, we have 4 above Deadly Earth. This is the burn cost to use the ability. Burn works like this. You have a maximum burn capacity, in my case it's 23 here, that is based on your Kineticist level and also your Constitution modifier. Your character has both a maximum burn capacity, but also a maximum amount of burn they can accept per action. For example, if I were to turn my last METAKINESIS feat on, Deadly Earth's cost would rise from 4 to 7, and I cannot accept that, despite the fact I have quite a lot of leftover burn, 5 out of 23. Each point of burn will reduce your hit points. It looks like a math equation, but here's how it goes. The first number is actually your temporary hit points, I have 66. The second one, your max hit points score. The third one, which is being reduced here, is the amount of burn you have, thus the minus 100. The last number, after the dash, is your final result after the burn cost has been taken into consideration. So 703 minus 100, 603. Don't forget, you still have temporary hit points added on top of it. Mastering burn is essential for any Kineticist, because when it comes to empowering your abilities, through, let's say, the METAKINESIS feats for ultimate damage, applying infusions and so on, well, they'll all increase the amount of burn you take. Now let's get into how to actually reduce the burn cost of your Kineticist abilities so you can spam them way more. It's mostly done through 3 different abilities: Gather Power Low, Medium, and High. You can only have one on at the same time. Turning them on is exactly the same as the other abilities. Just click on them and they will be outlined, so are on now. And they work like this. Each will reduce the burn cost by a bigger amount, but they'll also make it so it takes longer for you to actually cast your Kineticist abilities. Gather Power Low costs a move action, so it's the swiftest of them all, and since it's just a move action, you can still perform your blast at the same round. Medium, on the other hand, is a full round action, while High is both a full round and a move action. To put it simply, whenever you activate one of your Gather Power abilities, the burn will be reduced. For example, Deadly Earth is at 4 here, we turn Gather Power Low, and it becomes just 1. Now let's show how Gather Power works in action. So battle has already started, we have Gather Power Low turned on, and now let's attempt to cast Deadly Earth. You'll notice that my character will start channeling here before casting the ability, and there we go, now is when we unleash Deadly Earth. Now let's throw the same Deadly Earth, but with Gather Power Medium on. Notice how long it will take for my character to go through the channeling animations before he actually casts the same Deadly Earth, as this time it costs a full round action, so 6 seconds pretty much. Let's see how it goes. We've already began channeling, and again and again. And now is when we actually go through the casting animation to throw Deadly Earth at the enemies. So now we go. This is one of the main reasons why I prefer just the normal Gather Power Low, because of how much faster it is, especially during battle. However, There is something to be said about using the medium or the high version when it comes to ambushing enemies. Here's how it goes. Notice that we have already detected the enemies, thus the red outlines, but battle has not started yet, right? So they haven't detected us. This is when you want to go for either high or medium. Go with whatever one will reduce your burn cost to 0, in my case medium. The reason is simple, since the enemies have not detected you yet, it doesn't matter that you spend hours channeling, right? Because battle will only start after you've gone through the channel motions and unleash your power. So it's a win-win for us. There we go, now is when battle has finally started. Yes, it is true that this will result in lower damage, since you can only activate Demonic Rage for the OP bonuses during battle, but look, it's a free hit, and a lot of enemies in the game will fall flat when you ambush them with either Deadly Earth or the Wall ability. It's free damage, what's not to like? As far as the Metakinesis feats, just remember you can stack both at once. Ideally, you always want to have both Empower and Maximize on for ultimate damage. Now, before finally getting to the build section, I just want to cover how the Kinetic Blade ability works. It's unique in that, unlike the normal Blast, which by default is limited to around just 1 per round, the Kinetic Blade will get a number of attacks equal to the ones you have by class progression and other buffs and so on. For example, we have 3 plus 1 from Haste, and yet another from Aspect of Pazuzu from the Demon Path. It also has a burn cost that can be reduced, but the burn will only be applied once per round. So for example, I have 3 here. Let's destroy the Galustop collar with our blows. And there we go, like one hit we just dealt all of this. And we'll keep on attacking now. So the burn was only applied once, but after the new round comes, you'll have to pay the equivalent burn again. And of course you can combine it with Gather Power too. Ideally low, so you can still retain the ability to make all of your attacks in the round. Also, don't forget you can buff your Kinetic Blade just like a normal weapon with quite a lot of very useful properties, especially Enhancement plus 5, as by default the blade is plus 0. If you're wondering how to achieve all of this, please be sure to check my recently released How to Enchant and Upgrade Your Weapons to the Max guide you can find to the site here. So with that out of the way, let's now finally get into the Kineticist build, right? I know it was long, but I think it's pretty important to master the Kineticist mechanics. Now, when it comes to archetypes, I honestly still believe the normal Kineticist is by far the strongest of them all. All of the other archetypes, they often lose far too much. Take Kinetic Knight, for example. Losing all of the Metakinesis feats is shooting yourself in the foot, I'm afraid. Most of your OP damage will come from stacking at least in Power and Maximize together. Dark Elementalist is kinda gimmicky. Blood Kineticist doesn't really offer anything worthwhile. I suppose you could go with Psycho-Kineticist if you wanted to rely on Wisdom instead of Constitution. I just think Constitution is overall better because at least it increases your hit points. And as far as Elemental Engine, having to always be at max burn for some bonuses is not worth it. So Kineticist, the normal one, is the way to go. For race, I'll be going with Human. You can actually go with any race you want, it's just that since this is my first Kineticist guide in a while, I want to make something generic that most players can just easily follow. For background, I'm afraid it's always going to be Street Urchin and Pickpocket. Initiative does matter a lot for a Kineticist. Plus the other ones don't really do anything for you outside of flavor, I suppose. Gameplay wise, they just don't. As for ability scores, Constitution is your main attribute. You want 19 at character creation. As a matter of fact, it might even be 20, since Demon can enhance this even further. Almost everything you need comes from Constitution. More hit points, more burn, capabilities. It's just perfect for us. Then I would dump Charisma. I mean, you don't have to, it's just that it's completely useless for us. You can then start with 14 Dexterity, and I would just put the other 2 points into Strength. And you can also dump Wisdom a bit, but I wouldn't go lower than 8. Intelligence can be dumped as well, it's just that for this build in particular, when it comes to skill points, I kinda wanted it to be versatile, so it will have 3 skills. Mobility, Trickery and Stealth, all of the Dexterity ones. Even if we won't have high Dexterity, at least not super high, Through a lot of bonus Kineticist feats, we'll still be able to boost each of these skills by a lot of points so that you can easily make any of the checks with this character. Now let's cover our level 1 feats. Well, because your Kineticist blasts are either ranged or ranged touch attacks, you absolutely need both point blank and also precise shot. For your Kineticist element, I still think water is by far the most efficient element of them all, and the reason is simple. Water will give you access to a very useful Kineticist wild talent right at level 2. Slick works in the same way as the Grease spell, and in case you didn't know, Grease is OP, it's by far one of the best spells and abilities for the early game. The thing is, as an early Kineticist, you are pretty much just limited to 1 blast per round. Even a ranged, like bow character would already have 2 attacks with rapid shot, you don't. While you can eventually use this blast to one-shot enemies, it requires a roll to hit so can miss, and through the Slick ability, it's just way more efficient. Grease, or Slick, is an area of effect spell, bypasses the enemy spell resistance, so perfect for demons early on, can knock enemies down, and get this, enemies that are knocked down will lose their action for the round, also take a massive -4 penalty against melee attacks, which helps not only your own Kineticist with Kinetic Blade, but also your other allies hit these enemies to easily dispatch them. And last but not least, even if they get up after being knocked down, they will proc a free attack from all nearby allies. It's just too much, it really is stacked. I mean, you can't possibly compare just 1 blast per round to casting Grease. And you know, you can grease the enemies and just blast or attack them afterwards, right? So it's not like you're stuck just crowd controlling them. So to me, water is the way to go. For your first infusion, extended range, so you can use your blast from even far away if needed. And then, be sure to pick Water Blast. As far as Deity, since we are going with Demon, ones that allow the chaotic alignments. To me, Rovagug really fits this character since it's a god all about destruction, which is what our Kineticist will soon excel at. And then Chaotic Evil, you might also own the Demon alignment, right? For level 2, the highly powerful Slick. For your level 3 feat, Improved Initiative. The faster you can act, the faster you can spam Grease to easily knock enemies down before they can react or blast them into submission. And then Pushing Infusion. By default, you won't really do anything important at the beginning. I mean, it just pushes enemies away from you when you hit them with your blast. But later on, we can combine this with another infusion and the demon abilities to really get a lot of bang out of this. At level 4, be sure to increase Constitution, which is also what you want to increase on all of the other levels. But what we want is Elemental Whispers and then the Hair Familiar. Why? Well, so we can get a +4 bonus to Initiative. This character really is stacking Initiative to the max. For level 5, Weapon Focus into Kinetic Blast. I suppose you can go for Weapon Finesse. It's just that honestly, Strength is super easy to increase because of the Demon Path and size buffs. You'll end up with a lot of strength, even by just starting with 12, so I don't think it's as needed. And then Kinetic Blade at last. For level 6, I would pick a skill focus here, since I said I wanted this character to provide the dexterity skills. In this case, Stealth. Whenever you are traveling through the world map, you have to roll Stealth continuously not to get ambushed by enemies, and the checks can go for pretty high amounts. So the earlier you have this, just for the beginning of chapter 2 and the world map, the better. For level 7, I would actually pick out Flank. Yes, it is true that you cannot get attacks of opportunity with your Kinetic Blade, but you can at the very least contribute to your allies' own attacks by getting critical hits. Now for your second element, it is very important that you pick Earth. Earth is what allows us to get some of the most powerful Kineticist abilities. Not so early, but soon enough. For level 8, we want the bonus feats the Earth element added to us. First, Trip, which will come in handy very soon. Then at level 9, Fury's Fall to increase the power of our trips, and the Bowling Infusion. Whenever you apply this infusion to most of your Kineticist abilities, it will also attempt to trip the enemy, thus the trip boosts we have been getting so far. This character can reach higher than 100 for their trip attempts, without even rolling the dice. A tripped enemy is knocked down, and if you have been using the Slick ability, you know how powerful it is. Furthermore, through the Demon Mythic path, we'll get this to proc free attacks for maximum damage. As for level 10, another bonus feat from Earth, Greater Trip. For level 11, Improved Critical into Kinetic Blast, which also works for your Kinetic Blade. And on a critical hit, you'll be able to do close to 2000 damage. It really is that absurd. For your level 11 Infusion, I would go with Wall. Wall is actually the first really good area of effect infusion. Be sure to ambush the enemies with this. For level 12, I would get a second skill focus. In this case, either mobility or trickery. I'd rather go for mobility. Trickery is pretty easy to do, and you have a lot of gear or items that boost it. For our level 13 feat, Dazzling Display, so we can soon qualify for Shatter Defenses. And then at last, the most overpowered Kineticist ability of them all, Deadly Earth. You cast this and the enemies just explode. For level 14, I would just pick skill focus into trickery. I know I said it's not that important, but since we have the space, why not? I don't find much use for stuff like Kinetic Healer and Restoration. I'd much rather use Scrolls or the Divine Spells. Of course, you can also pick other skills of choice if you prefer. For level 15, Shatter Defenses at last, so we can easily hit enemies no matter their AC, with both our blasts and Kinetic Blade hits too. Understand that both Wall and Deadly Earth, they actually don't have to roll to hit, they are that good, they always hit the enemies. But for Kinetic Blade, Shatter Defenses really helps. Now your third element can actually be anything you want. I like going with Air. It has some decent abilities, especially the Cloud one. And for that you want the physical, so Air Blast, not the electric one. Go with Air. For level 16, well, let's focus on the talents the Air element added us. First with Aerial Evasion. It works the same way as the Evasion skill, except it costs 1 point of burn to activate, but will be permanent until you rest afterwards. Evasion is pretty handy to avoid enemy spell damage. For level 17, Power Attack. This does actually increase the damage of your Kinetic Blade, since ours will be fully physical, focused with Composite Blasts. While the damage boost might not seem that much, it's going to get multiplied by a lot of stuff, so it is worth it. As far as your infusion, you can actually pick anything you want. I like going with Cloud, as it's the third great Kineticist area of effect. Assuming they ever nerf Deadly Earth, let's say like not to work against enemies with wings, Cloud will be the one you want to use then. But for now you can just spam Deadly Earth against everything. For level 18, I would just go for Tremor Sense, as just like the echolocation spell, this can let you bypass enemy concealment, most of it anyways. For level 19, honestly you can pick anything you want. There's Lunge for higher reach with your Kinetic Blade, which so far isn't really needed because we can just use Kalavaku's Aspect to hit enemies through area of effect. So I'll just go with Toughness. I like having a very tanky Kineticist since for once we are a character fully focused into Constitution, so why not at the very least take advantage of our huge hit points pool. Any other infusion here, it doesn't really matter. Blade Whirlwind can let you hit multiple enemies with your Kinetic Blade. It's just that, you know, Deadly Earth, Wall, Cloud are kinda better. I'll be picking Entangling Infusion here, although it doesn't matter much at this point. Then, specialize into Maximized Metakineticist. When it comes to Empower, we can already reduce it to pretty low amounts through Mythic abilities and Gather Power. This way, we'll pay even less burn when applying both Empower and Maximized. As for the last level, well, you can pick anything. Honestly, I'll just pick Bonus Feat from WOTR and Bow Rush, because this helps increase the power of your pushing infusion, but like I said, it doesn't really matter that much. Now let's get into Mythic Progression for our Kineticist Demon. You can go with either Close to the Heavens for the healing or damage ray, it's just that you already have your blasts, but healing is always nice. I'd rather pick Bit of Fun, the Trickster thematic one, so that you then get a pretty nice +3 Circumstance bonus to all skills, and I did go for all of the dexterity skills with this character. Now, for Mythic level 1, this is very important, you absolutely want Kinetic Overcharge. Now your Gather Power ability will reduce the burn cost of your blasts by 1 additional burn point. What this means is, even the lowliest Gather Power low, which is pretty easy to activate because it just costs a move action, will reduce the burn even further. you really need this, and it's quite amazing that you can pick it so early, just at Mythic 1. Now, for Mythic level 2, I would already go for Mythic Trip. At this point it doesn't do much, it's just that the other feats we can pick now also don't matter that much. For Mythic 3, over-infuse blasts, so you can then apply 2 infusions at once, ideally pushing and bowling. Now is where the fun really starts, because of, wait for it, the cheesiest demon aspect of them all, Calavacus, which is what really makes the damage fly with this build. Whenever there's any absurd damage with demon, it's always because of Calavacus, whether melee or Kineticist. Anyways, whenever you activate your Deadly Earth with pushing and bowling infusion, you will not only deal the damage from it, which is already very high, but also get free kinetic blade hits against all of the enemies. I mean, you've seen it already, the damage is that good. And remember, as far as the other demon aspects, I already have a full demon guide covering them that you can check to the side here or in the pinned comment down below. For Mythic level 5, Kineticists don't actually have that many useful Mythic abilities to pick from besides the ones we just did. What I like doing now is going for Always a Chance. If you're using your normal blast, you only have 1 per round, and if you roll a 1, well, that's it, the blast fumbled because it's an automatic failure. On the other hand, if you're just spamming Deadly Earth, since it doesn't require a roll to hit, it doesn't matter, but with aspect of the Calavacus, we are also proccing loads of free kinetic blade hits, and you don't want to miss on a 1, right? Understand that it's not that necessary, it's just something I like having. For your second lesser aspect, Shear for the bonus to melee attack rolls. Then for your first major aspects, the usual. Balor not only for the bonus to Constitution, which is even better for a Kineticist, but also for the ability to automatically share your base rage bonuses with all allies. And then Vavakier for the bonus to Strength. There's also Coloxus to use abilities as a move action, it's just that most of the times I'm already using Gather Power Low as a move action anyways. For Mythic 6, Mythic Improved Initiative, we are always acting first. And then Babau, just because it always enhances all of your main skills, at least the ones I picked for this build, the dexterity ones. For Mythic level 7, honestly you might as well go with Last Stand, because the other ones are rather poor in comparison. The reason I don't pick this earlier is, well, we are a ranged character, so it's not like we'll be getting hit much and in risk of dying, especially with our amazing hit point score from high constitution. For another major aspect, you might as well go with Shadow Demon for the bonus to Wisdom. The other ones won't really do much. And then Incubus for higher weapon damage, but it can also enhance the DC of, let's say, your Sleek ability. For Mythic level 8, Mythic Power Attack. Any demon aspects now, we already have the best ones for our build. For Mythic level 9, you might as well go with honestly anything you want. I'll just pick Archmage Armor here. You can at least benefit from the bonus to AC from Potions of Mage Armor, which all last 1 hour anyway, so plenty. For your first Demon Lord aspect, you have 2 choices. Pazuzu, if you want more attacks with your Kinetic Blade, or Nocticula to share all of your rage bonuses with an ally of choice as a free action. I personally think Nocticula is more efficient overall. As far as Mythic 10, I just went with Mythic Toughness for even more hit points, since we have such absurd constitution. But look, you can pick anything you want at this point. Then the Demon Lord aspect you didn't pick before, so Pazuzu or Nocticula. Now let's at last get into gear for our Demon Kineticist. For the amulet, the classic Velexias for the highest constitution score possible. Besides that, just amulets that grant extra initiative earlier. For armor, as a Kineticist you can actually equip even light armor. So early on, if you want more AC, you can go with chain shirts and mithril chain shirts, but ultimately, because this build at the very least gets Archmage Armor, you can just go with Haramakis, Divine Guidance being pretty great for the bonus to saving throws. Robes are kinda useless for you overall, most likely just want the Robe of the 7 Sins for higher caster level and duration on some of your demon spells. For the belts, first belts that enhance constitution, but ultimately the very unique Clutch of Corruption belt. This can increase your constitution by a massive +8 enhancement bonus. There's nothing as powerful in the game for this build. I'm afraid gloves are also rather useless, you can go with anything you want. I just have the embroidered gloves here to flex high armor class. Boots also don't matter much for this build. At most, run X sacrifice if you want the bonuses to mobility and also the highest bonus to dexterity, with some other stacking bonuses to haste AC, or you know, just leave it for a dexterity character. The headband slot is very unique for this build. At first you want the lesser kinetic diadem, which can be found as early as chapter 1 I believe, but eventually the greater kinetic diadem for the massive boost to damage to your composite blasts. Your glasses can go two different ways, either piercing gaze for the bonus to damage against outsiders, so demons, or the rascal's goggles for the massive boost to trickery. For cloaks, as with any demon build, early cloaks of resistance with the highest modifier, but eventually the demon special mythic cloak. For rings, the first one is the unique Sigil of Destruction, which can be bought by the traveling skeleton merchant during the world map encounters. This can double your Kineticist blast's critical range, and even stacks with improved critical, something very uncommon. As far as braces, honestly for most of the game just keep to the engraved lucky bracers that you start the game with, but eventually you can also upgrade it to the braces of Abrupt Onslaught for the bonus to sneak attack, which we can get for free from a book found at chapter 5. Now let's get into weapons and Quickslots. When it comes to weapons, it's mostly going to be your Kinetic Blade. Once you get it at level 5, the blade can really achieve amazing damage. Earlier than that, since we have simple weapon proficiency, remember you can also equip long spears. You can use it to attack knockdown enemies from your Slick ability early game. And of course you always have access to your Kinetic Blast for ranged damage. Just remember it's limited to 1 or 2 per round as opposed to your Kinetic Blade. For Quickslots, the most important one is the Lesser Kineticist Rod. I don't believe you can actually find a normal version of this rod in the game, like in Kingmaker, but correct me if I'm wrong. We also have the Lucky Dice, just to get some minor boosts. The Dragon Familiar Jarsig Axe, because the extra elemental damage will apply to your Kinetic Blade hits, especially through aspect of Calavakus. The Imp Familiar for the very rare Profane bonus to Trickery and Stealth, as I made this character with a focus on the dexterity skills. The Signet of House Vespertilio to increase any skill of choice, usually stealth, and that's pretty much it. Of course you can give your character a pet through the Bismuth statuette. Well, so this was it for my updated Kineticist guide. If you found it useful, please remember to like, subscribe, and also consider becoming a channel member. I truly appreciate your support. Thank you for watching and see you next time, friends.